this video, I'm going to talk about getting a narcissistic co-parent to see your perspective. This is something that I find kind of carries over from the dynamics of the original relationship a lot of times. And it's because a lot of times for us, like, we just want to feel seen and heard and understood. And I think people that are, codependent, have anxious attachment style, all that kind of thing, as do I. It's a very common thing where we just want to feel valued and validated and all of those things. And so we're still kind of looking for that from our narcissistic co-parent. And, it's something that is very, very elusive. When we are dealing with a person on the other side who has completely devalued us and completely ignored us, it can almost make us almost desperate, right, for that type of validation and attention. And unfortunately, a lot of times in the first instance, we are continuing to try to seek it from them, which really makes no logical sense if you think about it, because it's like, okay, if you could get that from them in the first instance, you probably, well, one, they wouldn't be a narcissist, right? But you would probably still be in that relationship. If you were actually being validated and seen and heard and understood, you would still be in that relationship. And yet we come out of that relationship a lot of times because we haven't felt seen, heard, or validated. And suddenly we go barking up that same tree in an effort to get that validation as co-parents. The bottom line is a narcissist isn't going to be willing to give you that type of validation. And why? Because when they do that, they're giving away their power. So let's think about this, because a narcissist is all about power and control, right? I think that's the one thing that we all know. And so they cannot be the person in power and in control if they are treating you in a soft, considerate, tender way, right? I've had friends who have said that their ex has said things to them like, the person that cares the least is the one that has the upper hand in the relationship. And it's interesting when you think about a comment like that, because, and that came from like a high conflict narcissistic person. That specific comment is a very real comment. And the reason that they see it that way is because that's what relationships are about for them. It's about using that other person. It's about keeping that control, keeping the other hand, so that I can utilize the person or the situation to my advantage. And because we have, the relationship patterns, the wounds, the whatever it is that we have, we are continuing to seek after validation that we couldn't even get in the first instance. And for some reason, we tend to think that now that we're just co-parents and we're not in a relationship, that dynamic is going to change. I talk to people all the time that say, how do I get this person to change? How do I get the narcissistic person to change? You don't. They're not going to validate you. They're not going to care about you. They're not going to give away their emotional power in that regard, because whatever that wound or struggle or whatever they have says, if I give away this power, I'll die, right? That's how it feels to them. And for us, it's like, oh, if I don't get this validation, It's that same sort of dynamic, but you got to get that from somewhere else. You can't get that from this person anymore. And what that does is causes us to start to doubt our decisions in our co-parenting, in our interaction with them. Like if you have joint legal and you're trying to make a decision with this person jointly and you can't because you're trying to get them to validate you or agree with your point or see it from your perspective or whatever the thing is, and that's the approach that you're coming at it with, they're not going to give that to you, because again, that would be putting you in a position of power where you're getting to make the decision or you're doing whatever. So this is why I always talk about one of the things that I find really effective when you're dealing with this type of person is to give two options. when you're communicating on these types of decisions. Let's take therapy, for instance. Maybe you could say, I really feel like it would be helpful to get the child into therapy because, I don't know about you, but I'm getting stuff from the school about their behavior at school, or, we've seen them cry at transitions, or, whatever the thing is that you can think of that is something that they can't say, oh, well, that's not happening on my end, or whatever the case may be. So if you can find things like behaviors at school or things that are happening in both of your presence or whatever, that's going to help a little bit because it's happening on both sides. But then be able to say, I'd really like to get them into therapy. Here are 3 therapists I found. Let me know which one of those you would prefer to use. And that way the ultimate decision is on them and they get to make that choice. And that gives them the illusion of still being in control of the situation and not handing over their power to you, because that's the part that feels bad for them. I always liken it to like having your toddler and having a power struggle with your toddler over what clothes they're going to wear that day, right? Because we don't want them wearing really outlandish, mismatched things. And somehow that's the first thing the toddler goes for in the closet, right? Is like the most 2 mismatched items that they can possibly pull, or their winter boots on a, 90-degree summer day. It's always something like that, right? And so part of what most of us are trying to do as parents is teach our children to dress appropriately, dress accordingly. So you're not too hot, you're not too warm, you're not whatever. So the best thing they teach you to do is lay out 2 full sets of clothes and say, which one of these would you prefer? And that way they get to make a choice. They feel in control, but really you sort of presented the first initial layer of choices. And so that's kind of what you want to do with this person is, as you're navigating things with them, give them choices of how it will work, of how it would potentially work. I had a great example is I had parents who were arguing over, should we have 10 days or 14 days of vacation a year? And, the children were a little bit older, and one parent was like, well, I don't want 14 days of vacation because we have week on, week off, and I don't want the other parent to be able to take the children for 21 days in a row and me not see them. I want to be able to break that up more or whatever. And I think that, 10 days is sufficient for the year. And so I said, well, what if this is a pretty simple solution, but it's one the court uses sometimes. I said, well, what if you just go ahead and keep that? You'll do 14 days, but they can't use more than 7 days consecutively or 5 days consecutively or whatever it is. And that way you put that parameter in there where you're going with what they asked for, but you're just giving it a little bit of a tweak to where it was still ultimately their suggestion, right? That we're agreeing to. We're agreeing with the number of days that they wanted. Okay. Or like, let's say that they ask for picking up the child 2 hours early and you can't do that. Or you ask to pick the child up early and they say no. A lot of times they won't cooperate with things that we want. So we could come back and say, okay, well, if me picking the child up early on that day doesn't work, could I pick them up early the following day? Or could you just drop them off to me instead of me picking them up because I have this business meeting and I won't be able to get out until right at pickup time? Suggest a couple different alternatives to the situation that you're talking about. And again, that helps them to continue to feel in control and not feel like they're giving away their power to you. Because when we're looking for that softness and that sort of validation as a human being, we're expecting them to have a level of care and empathy that just doesn't exist for them. Okay. They're literally not capable of having that level, and they didn't have it during the relationship, obviously, or you'd still be with them. And so why are you expecting them to have it now? They're not going to. And so you have to find that validation from other aspects of your life and not even expect it from them. And when you get to that point, that's really where your emotional freedom lies, because then it's like, I don't really care what the other person does. At this point in my life, my kids are grown, so it's a different dynamic. I understand that. But at this point in my life, if I call my ex and he doesn't answer, I don't care. Or if he calls and I'm in the middle of something and I can't answer, I don't care. Do I call him back? No, not usually, because I just don't care. I don't even care enough for it to even bother me anymore, right? And you will eventually hit that point. So it's not that they change. He's still the same person he was when we got a divorce 20 years ago. I just have grown and strengthened emotionally to where I don't need anything from him anymore. And what he does doesn't impact me in the same way because I've moved through it emotionally. So if you would like help unraveling this, understanding why you're still seeking the things you're seeking from that other person and how you can move through it in a way that will make your co-parenting much easier, much less stressful, and really decrease the level of anxiety that you carry on a day-to-day basis around these issues, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's information on that page about my group coaching programs for moms and for dads. And there's also a link where you can book a call if you'd like to learn more about my premium VIP one-on-one coaching services. Those are usually services that I recommend if you are at the very beginning of a very long journey, if you have an attorney for the children involved, if you have a custody evaluator involved, if you've got a domestic violence going on and you're not seeing your children, or you've got a domestic violence going on and you're afraid for the children to be with the other parent. Those types of really complex, involved issues is where those services are more appropriate. So you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching, like I said, and learn more about that. All right. Thanks for joining me. I will see you guys next time.